Confrontation, organized by Strategic Vision Institute in collaboration with Department of DSS, Fayyaz University, Islamabad. The purpose of this book discussion is to highlight India's policy and behavior, which is definitely conflictual toward its neighbors. The growing wave of Hindu nationalism under the Modi-led BJP regime is heading India towards uncertain future. India is turning to a Hindutva state with no space for Hindu minorities. We are gratefully thankful to the Department of DSS, especially Dr. Shabana, in collaboration in this event and facilitating us. Let me invite Dr. Shabana to come on stage and take her seat. Dr. Shabana, please. I also invite Dr. Zafar Cheema to come on stage and take this seat. I also invite Dr. Rehman, the editor of the book, to come on stage and take his seat. Now let's formally begin the program with the recitation of Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان
Ladies and gentlemen, we are very delightful and thankful to have a distinguished panel, chapter contributors and the editor of the book, Dr. Rehman Malik. Before we proceed further, I would like to mention that all the opinions voiced at this platform are independent opinions of the speakers and audiences and do not the official policy of the SVI or the Department of DSS. This is an open house activity and it will be shared in social media and Facebook as well as our YouTube channel. This session will be live streamed on the SVI Facebook. The full recording of the event will be available on the official website and YouTube channel of the SVI. Now I would like to invite Dr. Shabana Fayyaz, Chairperson, Department of DSS, Fayyaz University, for welcoming remarks. Dr. Shabana, please.
Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I hope I am audible. It's a big honor and a moment of joy and pleasure to welcome SVI, headed by Dr. Zafar Cheema, to be here among us, who has served in the DSS for a long time and also the Dean of Social Sciences in the Albury University, Fayyaz University. So before moving on, I think there is no introduction required to the DSS. DSS has crossed almost 4 decades, and during this period, we have produced very serious scholars, researchers, policy planners, and the ones who are leading the think tanks. And our collaboration with Strategic Vision Institute is going to go further. I think SVI is an excellent platform. I have also and my colleagues spoken on their forum and written for the SVI as well and published with them. So the event is primarily focused for the students our future leaders to learn about this very important book and the subject that is India and its neighbors. I'm extremely humbled and honored to invite and welcome SVI to our department, and also acknowledge the recognition or acknowledge the presence of Dr. Saif Malik, who is also a Qaidian, an alumni of Qaidian, and now a director of India Studies Center at the Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. So at the hall, in the hall, we have very distinguished panelists, scholars and the students. We have the representations from the Area Study Center of the Qaid-e-Azam University, from COMSATS University, and from the very ISSI and SVI. With these remarks, I would like to say thanks and ask Mr. Zafar to carry on with the
Thank you, Dr. Shabana, Fayyaz. Now I would like to invite Dr. Zafar Cheema to come on stage and give his introductory remarks.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to come back to the department where I served 28 years, from 1980 to 2008. And more than being a faculty member or a chairperson of the department or dean of social sciences, it was a great honor to be a founding member of the Department of Defense and Strategic Studies. We founded together in 1980 and then continued with various. More particularly achieving for me was that I was the only PhD person in the department when we raised our MPhil program, and after which we started our PhD program. So this great tree today, the great flowering tree today is a result of a continuous effort and a contribution by a variety of persons which are now members of the Faculty of Defense and Strategic Studies, headed by very capable Dr. Shabana. So it's again an honor for me. I welcome my colleagues. I welcome my senior colleagues, I welcome my students who are now my colleagues at the Department of Defense and Strategic Studies. I congratulate Dr. Saif for writing a very good book. And the first thing I asked him in the morning when I met him, how could he? Well, the books are written. There are many books are written. And they are very good books. It's a very good book itself. I'm very proud of this, to say this. But how did he so quickly come out with a book? That is the point I want to ask him. Because I have been only able to write only one book in my life. And after that I have no time to write a book. It's a very demanding to write a book. This book is particularly on India's relations with neighbors, cooperation or confrontation. Unfortunately, the pattern, historical pattern since 1947 until today has been confrontation with India rather than a cooperation. So based on this historical evidence, we cannot say whether we will have cooperation with India or we will have a confrontation. We never know that. But the fact remains that India is a very important country from Pakistan's security and foreign policy perspective. I think it's the number one country which affects us. It's the number one country which affects us national security, politically, diplomatically, socially, economically, industrially, demographically. We are affected by India to the extent that we are affected by no other country. And that's why, if you remember it, all of you, that we have courses on India in your syllabus for the MSc, MPhil as well as for the PhD. We are also, one of the compulsory courses is India's foreign policy and India's defense policy. I think that itself demonstrates how important this is for. And I'm very impressed by this book, although I very honestly admit it. I have glanced through it. I didn't have time to read it the way you read as a student. I did not read it as a student. I read it as a colleague who can glance through the book. And I think a very seminal contribution to the subject of India-Pakistan relations. So as I said earlier, it's very difficult to make a prophecy or to forecast about whether we are going to have a cooperation with India, for which the chances are minimal, and the chances of confrontation are more than for the chances of cooperation. I think very profound question to be addressed by the students of Masters, MPhil and PhD level is India going to head for a difficult time for itself based on the philosophy of Hindutva, which India has now adopted very comprehensively? Because India's founding fathers, Jawaharlal Nehru and the Indian National Congress, founded India on the foundation of a secular and multi-plural country, and which India has now been completely deviating from that. So will India continue on that path, or will it continue on the path of secular India? It's very difficult to say that. It will largely depend on the next elections in India and the political forces which interact with each other, primarily in the Indian polity in the years to come. We need to see that. I leave it to authors to make their presentations on the chapter that they have written, and we then leave it to Dr. Saif whether he concludes the way he has concluded in the book itself. But I think we need to go beyond the book, and we need to have, the purpose of writing this book is that we need to have more and more literature on India and more literature on Pakistan. And we hope that some of you, we look at you as some of the future authors of the books and papers, research papers and articles to contribute to the subject of Pakistan foreign and defense policy. With that, I am very thankful to Dr. Shabana, who has very kindly allowed us to be back at the department. I remember this seminar was raised by me when I was chairperson of the department, and other two seminars, and the faculty block at the back of the Department of Defense and Strategic Studies. I am also grateful to the authors of the book. It's a great achievement that they have contributed, especially particularly on the head of that section is Dr. Saif Malik, who has contributed this book. But I will ask him, beyond the contents of the book, what is his opinion about India? Where is India heading today? And this is a seminal question which all of us should address in relation with Pakistan. With that, I am thankful to Dr. Shabana and Dr. Saif Malik, and I am thankful to all of you for being here with us, and let's have this interaction. Thank you very much.
Yes, Dr. Cheema raised many questions, so I would like now to invite Dr. Saif Malik to give his remarks about the book. Dr. Malik, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Very kind mentor, Dr. Zafar Iqbal Cheema, a kind friend, Dr. Shabana Fayyaz, respected faculty members, my dear students, Assalamu alaikum and very good morning. Being an alumnus of this institution, that too for a decade in various phases of life, what a delight being a part of this activity. At the outset, I am grateful to Dr. Cheema and Dr. Shabana for creating this opportunity and making it beneficial to all, especially as Dr. Cheema has mentioned, especially the students. They are the real users of this book and its content, because this book and the content of the literature give a way of hope and also give you a track for number of more research questions in the time to come. We've been part of a think tank. It becomes a responsibility what to research, how to publish, and how to disseminate. Especially in the modern era, in the contemporary world politics, where narrative matters a lot, especially in the world politics, and it also helps in developing your future trajectories of the politics and the discourses in the time to come. We can see a number of examples in the modern era. First, they established a fact, then they multiply it on so many forums. If it is a myth, that becomes almost a truth, like a weapon of mass destruction that lead to destruction of not only Iraq but the rest of the Middle East as well. Same goes to Afghanistan and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, on account of the narrative building, our adversary has trashed up very badly in the different era of the history. Gone the day when the conflict used to be resolved through the mechanized or kinetic means of force. So what comes there, how to achieve the targets, I think then narrative matter a lot in that aspect. While writing this book, the main idea was to go for the three-pronged strategy to achieve the result. First strategy was organize the event on particular theme, followed by research, then followed by its publication and its dissemination through various formats, whether it's electronics or the social media. This is how you promote your narrative across the globe. When we carry out research, especially I recall during my days in NDU, whenever some research was carried out in India, when our students, they Google or they go for the Google Scholar, they always come across with the bulk of literature which reflect the Indian perspective on the issue. And this was the aspect. That is why I said we were thrashed badly by the adversary on account of narrative. This is now our responsibility to put the record, to think to across the globe that people should also realize. Coming to the question which Dr. Cheema has just raised, I will briefly touch upon. Where India is heading in the movie, how the trajectories of the politics, whether it's the domestic or the regional, are taking shapes in the time to come. Other day I was in at some forum. It was informal, and the question was raised by so many: India is going to be strengthened or otherwise under Modi. I think we have to look at the recent courses of history and its various contours which taking place in India. Yesterday's report on the about minorities in India, I think that is an eye-opener for all of us. Apparently, under the support of the US strategic partnership, India really appears to be strengthened. That is why it is a cooperation or confrontation, respect or bullying. These questions were raised in this book. So, when we look at the domestic fault lines of India, and I am very much convinced with this, conviction is there, if Modi continues with the existing politics and those politics which are emanating because of the Hindutva ideology, not to tolerate any other within India, but Hindus only, and go for the Hindu Rashtra or the dominating force which could not tolerate any of the regional countries. So that is why we are trying to convince the world and giving them a signal, an indicator, the hegemonic regional aspirations of India are posing a challenge to the peace and stability of South Asia. So the world should look at the issue with some sense of wisdom and address those long-pending issues which can pose a challenge to the stability of South Asia, including the long-pending issue of Jammu and Kashmir. Now coming to the question, how this book was produced so quickly. I think once we conceived the idea how to develop some narrative on account of India, things were strategized in a manner, themes were developed, authors were identified. Sir, I am now responding to your question. How this book was developed. Themes were identified, authors were approached, and after having approached, a timeline was given. And unfortunately or fortunately, my military background always keep me disciplined on so many things. So one of the example is Dr. Inayat Kalim is sitting here. He can just respond that how many times I was bothering him. वो एक महीना आप में से 30 दिन में से 25 दिन हो गए, काउंटडाउन शुरू हो गया, 5 दिन बाकी है. इस तरीके से हमने ये किताब को कंप्लीट किया है, टाइम लेके, पीछे पढ़ के, रिक्वेस्ट करके और कभी लीवरेज अपना यूज करके. That is why. And secondly, once this book gone through the peer review process, that was a triple peer review. Still, I think there is a room for more improvement there. And we have 580 references in this book. I pay gratitude to my team which made it possible. And all the 580 references were vetted by my team. I must compliment to Mr. Ali Brig and my team member, Miss Mary Shafiz. If I could recognize, she may like to stand up. Thank you. So it was basically a teamwork. It was not a work of one person. I am always proud of my team. They work for me. They prepare a goal. I just make a hit and go for my result. So with this, I am grateful to Dr. Shabana and our mentor, Dr. Cheema, for providing us this wonderful opportunity to interact you all and to make some more question in the time to come. I think the preparation question is, if no confrontation and without confronting the enemy, how to achieve the course of peace and stability in South Asia. तो हमारे आने वाली book जो है उसके ऊपर we have already strategized, and inshallah we will soon a course of paper you might visit at the ISSI website. So I look forward intellectual discourse from the contributors and our mentors and the students. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Saif, for your detailed analysis. Now I invite Dr. Inayat Kalim, the chapter contributor of the book, to come on stage and give his remarks about his chapter. His chapter title is Rising Tension Between China and India, Implications for Pakistan.
Audible, so I don't want to use this mic. Presenting your paper before a learned audience is a very difficult job. And it is even more difficult to present it in 5 minutes. I know the generosity of the chair, Honorable
That's hardly a generosity.
Honorable President SVI, Professor Dr. Zafar Cheema, political, social scientist, of course, pride of Pakistan, Dr. Shabana, Dr. Saif, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's still morning. Good morning. When I wrote my chapter, geopolitical dimensions were different. We witnessed an eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation between India and China for more than 6 months. And my synopsis on this was that volatility between Indo-Sino border dispute can easily catch fire on Pakistan's border. It means Pakistan will be affected in one way or the other. It cannot remain aloof from these developments. How? Let me explain it to you. Ladies and gentlemen, and mostly you are the students of DSS International Relations. Actually, we are living in 2 worlds. The one is totally based on idealism. When you read UN Charter, you will come across humanity, mankind, territorial integrity, human rights, self-determination. A rosy picture will be presented to you. Very promising, very auspicious, but that is not the reality. I have not experienced that kind of world so far. To the contrary, we are living in a world which is factually based on realism. When you have a lens of realism, you will analyze that the paradigms of states are high GDP growth rate, fostering economic ties, building alliances, making strategic arrangements. These are the talk of the short tongue. And there will be no place for morality, ethics, self-determinations, and human rights. These will be only addressed if these come in their way of self-interest. So where we are, the question is where we are located. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in South Asia, and South Asia is generally perceived by the world as a volatile and unpredictable, where war is always imminent. You can expect war anytime because people of South Asia have very high sentiments. We are full of sentiments. In this situation, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about war, what is war? You know that war is followed by misadventure, is driven adventure from any side. can trigger conventional war between India and Pakistan, with the potential of crossing threshold to nuclear catastrophe that could cause devastation at global level. So what options do we have, ladies and gentlemen? We have two options. Number one, to maintain status quo, which is we are doing, to have minimum credible nuclear deterrence and to have equilibrium on conventional warfare with India, which is very, very difficult. There is no match to the Indians' economic strength. We cannot do that. We cannot afford that. Because India, economically, it is a big chunk. And our economy is going through crunch. We are going through a very, very difficult times. If we do that, we have to compromise our health budget, our education budget, and as well as our developmental budget. We cannot afford that. So what is the alternative? We need to sensitize international community. This is my today's take, which is the dimension which has not been explored by any one of us so far. How will we sensitize international community about the devastating repercussions of nuclear catastrophe and escalation? Before answering that, let me build up my case before you. There was a book published by Detective J.J. Beaton Binder in Europe. नहीं सर जल्दी अच्छा Beaton Binder, Street Smarts. In that book, the author says, if you are attacked or if you are in trouble, do not scream, help me, help me, help me. Rather, shout, fire, fire, fire. Because when you say, help me, nobody will rescue you. Everybody will be thinking he or she is in trouble, so he or she will deal with it alone. But when you say, fire, 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 everybody will rescue you because they will be thinking their belongings, their selves are equally in danger. Now you need to relate this with Pakistan. Since our inception, we have been screaming, help us, help us, help us. No one has come to rescue us. Now this is the time, ladies and gentlemen, to say fire, fire, fire. To sensitize international community about the devastating effects of nuclear. What are the devastating effects? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to conclude. A Western climate scientist, Owen Brian Tone, has recently scientifically proved that war is imminent between India and Pakistan due to only one factor, that the trajectory of political struggle of Kashmiris has reached Apache, a site where intersecting state interests of India and Pakistan could ignite. And if war occurs, India has superiority in conventional weapons, and definitely Pakistan will go for nuclear, and in nuclear detonation there will be smoke that would remain in the atmosphere for almost a decade, causing and bringing temperature to an ice age, freezing everything around, and then there will be a food shortage, and that food shortage will bring starvation. 90% of the world population will die of that starvation, and that would be the end of civilized world. This is not my prediction. This is something proven by Western scientists. This is something we need to sensitize into international community, because whether they are developed, civilized, black, white, what kind of, whatever they have, the dynamics, they will prefer life over development and civilization. Last but not the least, ladies and what would be the benefits of this sensitization? Number one, whenever there will be chances of war, they will intervene to minimize the escalation. Second, in the long term, they will look for durable peace in the region by resolving key issues between India and Pakistan. To say this, जिस खेत से दहकां को मुयस्सर ना हो रोजी, उस खेत के हर गोशाए गंदम को जला दो. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Inayat Kalim, for your detailed analysis of the South Asian strategic culture. I also thank Dr. Cheema, Dr. Saif Malik, and Dr. Shabana for coming to stage. Now we will begin our second session, that is a book discussion among three eminent scholars who will come on stage, and we will begin it. We have Dr. Shabana Fayyaz for this book discussion. Yes, please. We have Dr. Shabana Fayyaz among the discussants, Chairperson Department of DSS, Qaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad. The second discussant is Dr. Munawar Hussain, Assistant Professor, Area Study Center, Qaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad. We have also Dr. Salma Malik, Assistant Professor, Qaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad. I request you all to come on stage and we will have a book discussion. Dr. Munawar, please. Dr. Shabana and Dr. Salma Malik.
Yes, yes.
Okay, as the discussion is about India's relations with neighbors, and we see that today's India is not, which was founded on the principles of secularism, when we talk about India's policy towards its neighbor and peace and security in the region, it's incomplete if we do not ponder upon the Kashmir issue. While looking at, I'll come to first to Dr. Salma, while looking at the post August 5, 2019 situation, what's your take on the Indian policy towards its neighbor and especially Kashmir?
Thank you so much, Afisa. First of all, artist congratulations to the editor. I have done an edited volume and I know it's not an easy job. You think that it's an easy way out to pen a book, but then you realize that it's one of the worst things that you ever decided. And it's such an honor and pleasure to have Dr. Zafar Cheema returning to his department and having his late gathering of DSS alums with us as well. To your question, Zafar Saab, when we look at how India's policy has evolved in the last couple of years, especially with regards to Kashmir, you tend to see there is a pattern through which India has developed and done what it has done ultimately through the revocation of 370 and 35A article. Back in the 1990s, when the BJP had its first stint in office, Vajpayee and the people who were there tried to make fundamental changes in line with the saffron policy that was evolving. Yet nothing too big could happen. I mean, Kashmir became turbulent. There were many things that were happening in India around that time. There was also a reclaiming of the Hindu space in India. Yet the fact was that to a larger extent, not much of a ground reality shifted in Kashmir. Any type of atrocities, genocide that was taking place was happening even under the Congress-led government or the non-Saffron government. So one thing that we need to correct here is that many people consider that it's only the Hindutva policy makers who have been very harsh on Kashmir or on the minorities. But if we actually take a very pragmatic look at how India's treatment of minorities has happened, even in the formative years, under Nehru, under Indira Gandhi, and so on, the minorities, especially Muslims, have been targeted. The emergency was largely a part of that episode. Sorry, I'm taking the longer route, but I'll just finish in a minute. So, when it comes to Modi's government, we saw that Modi actually implemented or placed in the manifesto this program of changing Kashmir's status for good and finishing it. It's our fault as Pakistanis that we never really took it seriously. We kept on thinking that, oh, this is a narrative that is oft-repeated and what more can we do? Part of that was our faith in the UN system and the multilateralism that India cannot change things unilaterally. Yet the fact was that it did what it did because it has control of the land, it has control over the people, forceful control or whatever you would like to call it, and they did and they got away. And that's a $1 million question as to what would happen as a result of this. We are seeing that 2 years have passed, the international community has done a bit of lip syncing and nothing beyond that. So I don't really see that there's going to be much optimism in it. BJP had in its manifesto, and first tenure, Modi's first tenure, they tried doing what they wanted to do, couldn't implement it, and then eventually in the second tenure, they just did it in a stroke of a pen. So I would say that this is a very sharp vision Modi and the Hindutva policy has, and they are doing it through high-handedness, whatever you would call it, but they're getting over it. Thank you.
As you know, Modi has been successful by abrogating Article 370 and 35A. How do you see that? How much it has affected India's image globally?
I think we can speak, it's quite audible. I would actually say, has it really tarnished India's image? I don't really find that the international community really felt that India has done a huge human rights atrocity. Many countries are doing it because human rights, ethics, values, they're all very selective notion, and whenever countries are doing these things, they're very sharp on how the international environment is going to assess it, and they get away with it. So long as we want to revoke these feelings in people, in the international community, it has a currency. But would that actually make any of the policy makers globally or any countries globally to rethink and investing in India? Unfortunately not. I mean, at the eve of Donald Trump's visit to India, right next door, I think, beyond the wall of the stadium where he was being sung and danced and all that, and he was really celebrating the Trump movement with Modi and all those hugs that they were making. People were being butchered in Delhi streets. The Muslims were being killed. And it's not that the American Embassy and CIA did not do factual reporting, they were doing it. But that didn't really change Trump from turning back from India and saying that, okay, my plane is not going to land here because this city is being painted red by the blood of the Muslims. So the very fact is that this is all very intrusted. And because it's India's moment right now, the countries worldwide in this age of recession, plus post-COVID, they would love to quote a country which has pocket full of money and which also has a vision to garner the money and to garner investment worldwide, and human rights, occupied territories, and all of these things become a secondary notion. Additional to that was the international enabling environment of ultranationalism that really helps the likes of Modi and others to get away with such atrocities.
Thank you, Dr. Salma. We have 8 minutes for each speaker. Now I quickly come to Dr. Shabana. While looking at the topic of the review of foreign policy and its relations with neighbors, I'll ask Dr. Shabana that how do you see that towards which trajectory India is going vis-a-vis its neighbors and its policy, and what will be its repercussions for India and especially the Modi-led BJP regime in India?
Zafar, you have asked a very all-encompassing question, and that is actually a question that is being held and deliberated by the book. It's being edited by Dr. Saif Malik. It answers a lot of questions. In fact, it answers multiple and multiple questions. And I really feel that the book has answered more than the question. So it has predicted the future. But moving on to that, that has been said earlier, what we have to do. Do we have a recipe? I think this is a question that really requires in-depth introspection. And as editor of the book has highlighted that there is another book incoming for that. Primarily, I really feel that as my colleague and a friend Dr. Salma has rightly said, India has a cloud, and that is economic, geostrategic, and a vision. So the bigger question for us is, we do also have a cloud, we are also nuclear, so what we lack? As has been pointed out very clearly by Dr. Inayat, we lack economic might. And on one hand, we have a very, very advanced and capable our forces and domain. On the other hand, we have the people dying because of the poverty and the unemployed youth. So this is something that we really need to fix. We have to do our homework, and then we are doing our homework. But that is a very, very long process and a painful process. Every day we see the prices are increasing of the very basic needs. So what do you think in such a circumstances the public that has a short memory will think how to compete with India? So there is a pessimism and there is an optimism that envelops the book. And I really feel that the book, or the present narrative in Pakistan, is, to answer your question, is a very alarmist narrative. It is a very, very, you can say, negative perception and a very realistic perception of future of India. But the question is, again, if it is so, my only intake here is the book and the work would have been more interesting if you would have included a chapter of why India behaves the way it behaves. So this is something that really requires, we have been reading about Chanakya and others, and if you look into the Indian works, they also answer, and it could have made the book more, more interesting, that we are having an excellent writers on this side, but I think if by some person neutral or the non-Pakistani person, maybe Indian or other South Asian, would have made the book more interesting. And another important point coming to I really feel the book is that book reviews of the book are limited in India, in international domain. We have the works like many other Pakistani works and are brilliant scholars, mostly on Kindle and Amazon, but not much reception from the other side. So this is something, as has been pointed out, that by Dr. Inayat and Dr. Salma, we have to sensitize. And that sensitization does not mean that we are telling our story on our own. That really means that our message goes more than that. It reaches the civil society and our friends in India who are also peace-loving, who want a constructive, we are engaged with them on constructive dialogue. So this is what is required, and it is very painful. Maybe my generation will go the way it is going with India, but I have high hopes that my next generation will turn a new page of relationship with India. The message of hope is CPEC, connectivity. And somehow we have to, convince directly or indirectly to deal with India. So this is what it is at the moment. And I really feel that we, as a Pakistani and a scholar, we don't have to have our own perspective only. in vacuum. We need to have a collaborative publications. And there is no dearth of scholars in South Asia and India who can build the peace narrative together. Thank you so much.
One more question. I'll quickly ask that India has been turned into a Hindutva state. How do you see BJP's future in India?
Well, I must admit I am not an expert on India, but as a Pakistani scholar, I must say that India is going the way it is going, and the world and the neighbor has to have some innovative means and constructive means to reach out to our neighbor that is big in size, in economy and otherwise. So we have to be innovative, but I really feel also that we have to be alarmist. It is going to be more troubled, and it is going to be a new wave of diplomacy and digital age that we are living in to deal with India that is, well, we say they have turned really saffronized, yes, from our lens, but again, why they have done so? And what are the pockets available to them? Where is the vacuum that exists where you can build a narrative or, that to somehow derail the process?
When I see Pakistan's India policy, we see again that a narrative is missing, that what India is doing in Kashmir, what India's behaviors towards its neighbor, which needs to be fed. Now I'll come to Dr. Munawar Hussain, and I would ask that kindly elaborate your analysis about the book. What's your comments on this, please?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Zafar, for providing me the opportunity to develop my insight regarding India and its behavior, internal and external dynamics, articles which are written by eminent scholars from the country and outside of the country. Excellent book, and I must congratulate Dr. Saif Rehman. Excellent book because it offers many insights regarding the behavior of India. And I have taken certain points. This is very significant contribution in terms of critical and practical point of view. And it offers literature on India, and it offers insight which would be useful for scholars, for policymakers, for strategists. What are its main characteristics? Main characteristics, it offers different themes, different concepts, and different even terms. You see, the theme, for instance, in the chapter 1, written by Misbah Mukhtar, this is chapter 2, it offers the concept regarding Indo-Pacific region. And she identifies that different states, they have given different definition as per their interest. I mean, this is very interesting point. And then like Professor Dr. Golden Aman, a Turkish professor, I think she's Turkish professor.
Yes.
In chapter number 1, she identifies two important variables. And she is giving a striking framework, analytical framework. She says that power and identity together, explaining strategic behavior of India and its dilemma in Afghanistan. Again, the two important variables, power and identity, which are basically in contradiction with each other. The positivism versus post-positivism, you see. Then new terms like Dr. Rasul Walid and Awais bin Wasi in chapter number 6, page 113, they are giving the concept regarding Muditva, the advanced form of Hindutva. Though he is not providing the operational definition of the concept, which is the requirement of a scientific method. But I mean, again, it is very interesting. Then the other important characteristic is that it is a very understandable book. The language is very easy and very understandable. It is also short and comprehensive. I mean, within 221 pages, it covers all aspects, all themes, all directions and facets of Indian behavior. it also fulfills important task of the research. I mean, it describes the problem. The problem is Indian belligerent behavior. And why India has belligerent behavior, it offers explanation in terms of theoretical framework. उसके अंदर आप देखेंगे कि it provides, it takes help from already existing theories like realism, constructivism, post-constructivism. और इसके साथ साथ it also gives covering laws, a new concepts, a new framework, जो कि किसी पैराडाइम के अंदर किसी pigeonhole में fix नहीं होता. It is also analytical because it offers analysis regarding the implication of Indian behavior on the subcontinent. Or then it also offers way forwards, जिसको हम कहते हैं policy prescription. So all important tasks जो कि all important tasks जो कि scientist perform करता है वो हमें इसके अंदर नजर आता है. The question is what books offers. The books, number one, it offers very rich historical and contemporary facts regarding India, its internal and external behavior, especially its relations from the East China से लेकर to the West Pakistan and from North China से लेकर नीचे श्रीलंका तक का होता है. But it says that we can understand India by having three levels of analysis. It offers all these three levels of analysis. Now it says that at unit level, regional level and systemic level. At unit level analysis, it is based on superstructure that Hindutva या मुद्दित्वा जिसे आप, which is shaping up the Indian current behavior और जो aggressive उसका जो posture है. It is reshaping Indian society. और इसके फिर आगे जाके बड़े serious report. At regional level, it also informs us that Indian weak neighboring states, they are responsible for this Indian belligerent behavior. Like all states, for instance, some states they are landlocked, Bhutan and Nepal, utterly depending on India. Like water resources of Pakistan and Bangladesh is in the hand of India because of its geographical position. You see, so therefore, water resources regional level because of Indian because of its weak neighbors encourages India to have. At systemic level, you see this octagonal multipolarity, where different centers of powers they are rising, especially rising China, which gives an impression and understanding. Which gives an understanding to Americans that China is a rising threat, and this understanding is not a new understanding. This was even initiated by the junior Bush, and he was started to take initiative against China, but it was the 9/11 that hampered that move. Rising China led America to have this Indo-Pacific strategy that makes India center and strategically very important country. और यही वो reason है जिसकी वजह से India has advantage in military affairs and in maritime affairs. You see. अब यहाँ पे करना क्या चाहिए? I mean, इससे पहले कि आप सवाल करें, इसका result क्या होगा? The result is that this whole situation is leading India to the doomsday. This is my understanding. I always say on media and to my students as well. Number one, जो आपने डॉक्टर सलमा से पूछा है, डॉक्टर सलमा ने कुछ चीज़ों को आइडेंटिफाई किया. The most important जो प्रॉब्लम इंडिया के साथ फेस आएगा या फेस आ रहा है, that is its image. The secular, the largest democracy of the world, this concept is compromised because of this movie policy. There is no more, India is no more secular state, जहाँ पे lynching हो रही है, killings हो रही हैं, forceful conversions हो रही हैं to Hindu. So image यहाँ पे compromise हो रहा है. दूसरा EU info जो lab का जो event है,
that discredited India and Indian media. How you will build a narrative? Through media. And since media is discredited, so I think this is again a disadvantage that India is having. Then human rights violation in India and Kashmir made India, in my view, find that a rogue state. Why it is a rogue state? Because it is not complying the international law and order and norms and resolutions of the United Nations. So prescription kya hai? Number one, I believe that all member nations of South Asia, they have to show patience, because Indian behavior, it is based on decades. So सबसे पहले तो patience and unity and coordination among all members. Second, try to bring change within India through promoting propaganda, because there are certain sane voices in India. उनके साथ काम करने की ज़रूरत है. Third, narrative making, as you mentioned. The most जो ignored area है, that is narrative making. I think पाकिस्तान की जो foreign policy के अंदर जो मुझे weakness नज़र आती है, I mean many steps are taken, but narrative making is still weak. This is a good effort again. आपने mention किया कि this is the starting point of narrative making. And after narrative making जो है, we have to disseminate it from the centers of the world, centers of information, like it is whether it is Washington or New York or London or Paris या कतर है आपका, तो narrative making उसके अंदर होनी चाहिए. Then sensitize करने की आपने बात. Yes, through narrative making we can do this, and we can let international community to sensitize regarding the human rights violation within India and in Kashmir. You see, and Dr. Shiri Mazari का मैंने यहाँ पे quote लिखा हुआ है, जो book ने quote भी किया हुआ है, that we need to convincing international community that appeasement aggressor makes more aggressor. यहाँ पे ये करने की जरूरत. Last, balancing India. I mean, no movement in the world is successful, especially the movement of independence, without balancing from the outside actor. Whether it is American independence, French, they balanced it. Recent crisis in Middle East between Palestine and Israel, citizen journalism ने balance किया. And I do believe that without balancing Kashmir, Kashmir issue cannot be resolved. So how can we balance India? And we can do it through China and Russia, especially in the Indian Ocean. Or last but not the least, Pakistan must maintain balance in its relations with all powers of the world as much as possible. We cannot do it for a long time, because if there is a bloc politics, अगर ये start हो जाती है, तो we would be compelled either to take this side or that side. But जहाँ तक हम कर सकते हैं, we should do this.
Thank you, Dr. Munawar, for your detailed comments. I think time will not allow me to ask a further question from Dr. Munawar. We are thankful to Dr. Salma for sparing some of her precious time and addressing this occasion. Also Dr. Munawar and Dr. Shabana for facilitating us. Now I would like to request Dr. Cheema to come on stage and present souvenirs to the participants and discussants. Dr. Cheema, please. First of all, I would like to request Dr. Shabana to come and receive her souvenir pack. Number side देखिएगा. Thank you. Now I would like to invite Dr. Salma to come and receive her souvenir pack. Thank you. Now I would like to request Dr. Saif, the editor of the book, to come and receive her souvenir. Now I request Dr. Inayat Kalim to come and receive her souvenir. Thank you, sir. Now I invite Dr. Shabana to come and present share to Dr. Cheema. I think Dr. Munawar is remaining, and we request Dr. Munawar come and receive first winner. Thank you so much, Dr. Cheema. We are here thank for the speakers, all the speakers, chapter contributors, all the participants. We request faculty member and guests to come for a photo session. After that, we have.
May I say one thing? One small little thing. I can say otherwise. Go to my.
जब पाकिस्तान है ना तो बिजली चली गई।
कोई बात नहीं।
हमने जनरेटर बुला लिया था लेकिन माइक के पैसे नहीं थे।
नहीं कोई बात नहीं।
साउंड सिस्टम है ना आपने इतना स्पॉन्सर कराया था तो जरा ये भी।
I am honestly speaking, very honestly speaking, a little alarmed by Dr. Inayat Kalim's over projection of a nuclear catastrophe. I do not believe in that. Not because I am a realist, because there is an equilibrium of deterrence between People's Republic of China, India, Pakistan, Russia, and the other countries of the world. So as you know that, as we know, and I do expect Dr. Shabana and Dr. Malik that they do teach it to their students, that there is a philosophy of deterrence.
नहीं डॉक्टर साहब ने बड़ी अच्छी तरह पढ़ाई पर्सनल लेवल पे भी
And nuclear weapons are deterrent of their own self. So there is equilibrium of deterrence, and we hope are not. Yes, I know he did not project it himself. It was projected by a Western author. And there are all kinds of opinions in the world and this and this. And we hope not, our future lies that there should not be a nuclear catastrophe.
Thank you, Dr. Cheema, for